I was just going to check it out, but I can go back.
I'm recording, by the way, now. Welcome to this Learning Circles hangout, is what we used to call it. It's still a hangout, so it doesn't matter, regardless of platform. But Marco says that we should stay on Blab. Why?
Hangouts become unmanageable with lots of people, in my opinion.
But so is the experience we're having right now, too. We were able to do more than just 4 people from what I remember, and now we have this limit of 4 people. What's going on here? But that's a very good point, Marco.
You mean there's no absolutely
and I'm
perfect
certainly happy to. It seems like I don't know if people are seeing me as one of the 4. I'm certainly happy to drop off because it's my first one, so I probably have a lot to learn. So,
no, whoever wants to talk is welcome to talk on this.
Are we able to be on microphone?
It's a hangout, so everybody's open to talk.
Does it help if we get off camera but stay on mic? Can we do that? Or is it just 4?
I don't think you can do that. I think it's 4 and then maybe viewers or something.
Can you guys hear me now?
I'll get off and listen.
No, well, unless you want to.
Well, I mean, it feels. I mean, it's my first one. It sounds like this has been going on for a while. So let me just listen in. And
well, before you leave, if you do still want to leave, free to stay. Are you? I think we wanted to talk about events and stuff coming up 2016. Anything that we don't want to miss? What are you guys doing as far as events in 2016? Presenting, attending anything you want to attend that you've heard is great, that you haven't attended before, that you're trying for the first time, anything like that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I know we're presenting at the ATD conference, but other than that, I don't think we have anything that is currently scheduled. Yeah.
International, you mean? ICE?
No, the one, I believe here, the one here in Denver, if I recall.
Technology?
Yeah.
No, the Denver one is ICE. That's in May, right?
Yeah, that's the international conference.
Yeah, technology is happening right now, actually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was supposed to be there. I was supposed to do a session today and on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Why you're not there?
First time ever I had to cancel. On Monday I came down with a high fever and went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you can't travel. And I said, oh, but I have a session on Wednesday and Friday. And she said, you can't travel. And so I had to beg off. I sent them my apologies. And my first time ever having to cancel a conference session. Oh. But apparently it was a good idea for me not to give whatever I had to everybody else on a plane, who would then have given it to everybody else. And eventually the whole world would have been sick. So
you basically would be the reason of the apocalypse. Yes.
Yeah, and I would have been Typhoid Joe. Yeah. Anyway, I'm feeling much better now. So.
Well, I'm sorry you had to cancel that, but what else do you have planned then?
Oh, I'll be teaching at Learning Solutions Conference next month. I'm sorry, training next month in Orlando, and then Learning Solutions the month after. Gosh, I have a bunch of them coming up. I have a bankers training conference, and that's going to be in Austin, and that's going to be in May. In May, I have 4 in a row. I mean, I have 2 in May and 2 in June that are 4 in a row. So I have the Bankers Training Conference. I have ICE in Denver. Then I have the Dev Camp Conference in Salt Lake City. Mm-hmm. That's Jason Bickles. That's a good one. And then after that, just one more. I'll have to double check.
You're all over the place.
Yeah, I kind of am.
I'm going to be at training too. I'm going to be manning the test kitchen, technology test kitchen too. It was about that. And that should be it's a fun format. People just come and go and try different technologies. No commitments. It's not like a session type of format, so it should be fun to do.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, and then of course the last one was MLearnCon, which is the E-Learning Guild conference. So I'll be jumping between Texas, Utah, Texas, Denver, and Texas, Colorado, Utah, and then back to Texas again, and then home.
And always talking about learning development tools, right?
Yeah, not always, but most of the time, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Since we have you there, what do you see anything as trends in 2016 happening? Anything different happening with regards to tools and development? that you?
You asking me directly?
Yes.
Well, yeah. I've actually been working on organizing a ton of data that I've been collecting over a while. And what's surprising, not really surprising, but what's really been interesting to me has been that the number of tools that are coming out very soon or have recently come out that are all cloud-based, and all are using the same model of the sprint model, which is basically 2-week sprints to update for updates. It's really changing everything, because gone are going to be the days soon, I think, where we're going to have those 1, 2, 3 year lapses between updates. The world is much faster now, much more frenetic. So we have tools that are going to, in essence, and essentially change almost every time we log on. There'll be something new, some new feature, and so on. It'll be incremental learning of a new tool's features, rather than, oh my gosh, Lectura 84 just came out, or Captivate 93 came out, and we have 8,000 new features that we have to learn all of a sudden. It's interesting. I'm finding it really interesting. There's also I do a review every month for Learning Solutions, and I have too many tools to review now, whereas at a time in the past there were times when I just didn't seem to have enough. So yeah, it's going crazy.
Yeah, that's the problem now, right? It's we have too many tools too. It's like if I look on my ribbon on PowerPoint and Word, it's like all those add-ons there, all over the place.
Yeah, we have several PowerPoint ones that have been around for a little while. Microsoft Mix is the one that's probably least known, but it's one that's been around for a couple of years, but it's gotten bigger and better, and it's free if you have an Office license, a Microsoft Office license. It's interesting because it can do a lot of the things that people expect from an e-learning tool in PowerPoint, but it doesn't do it all. Whereas, in fact, I have to go and download the latest version, because it doesn't get pushed, or you don't even get notices for it. You just have to check once in a while, at least as far as I've seen. But iSpring came out with their new version, and it's pretty phenomenal. Hey, how you doing?
All right, how's it going?
Good to see you, Greg.
Yeah, you too, Joe.
Did it work?
Yeah, well, actually, I just had to switch to a non-Chromebook situation, which is like...
Oh, you know what? I did. I pasted the link to what...
You did, yeah, and I checked that out. And that was sort of helpful. I have a camera thing with this thing. It goes beyond black. Please continue. I was listening.
Okay. Yeah. I'm glad it worked. So I'm sorry. We were at
iSpring new stuff.
Yeah, iSpring came out with their new tool, and I really like their new dialogue builder. It's basically a way of setting up soft skill scenarios that, of course, this is the first iteration, so it's kind of limited, but it does a pretty good job, and it doesn't require that you set up a separate PowerPoint slide for every step along the way. I'm in love with Adobe Presenter's new Video Express tool, or the update anyway, because it makes green screen video recordings and screen recordings so much easier now. And I've now actually purchased and set up a green screen little video studio in my home in a spare room I had, and I'm going to be creating a lot of videos this year, I think, using that approach. So there's pretty cool things. I mean, people who look at a tool and kind of don't look at updates and upgrades for a long time, they're missing out.
Yeah, things are changing quite a lot right now. So what do you think that? I feel I have kind of mixed feelings about the subscription model of tools, where you don't have to wait a year or two to upgrade. Now all of a sudden you feel like you have to upgrade to the latest all the time, or you have to renew a subscription and all of that. Do you think a lot of those tools are going to be adopting that type of model now, kind of like Adobe Cloud, for example?
It's a really good question, and I'm not sure I'm in a position to answer it, only because I'm not always clear on the mindset of the vendor when it comes to that. I will say that I definitely see advantages and disadvantages. In fact, one of those disadvantages has kind of come back to bite me in the butt this past week, because one of the things that when you purchase a license, full license on something, is it's yours, and even 10 years later, it'll still work for you.
Mm-hmm.
The subscription model is not like that. Once you, let's say Captivate, I'm not quite sure how the other ones work, and certainly some of them don't have the subscription model, like Storyline doesn't have one yet. I don't think Lectora has one yet either. But okay, the subscription model for Captivate, the rule that, as I understand it, is that if Captivate 10 comes out, I can upgrade for free. It's part of my subscription, but my Captivate 9 will continue to work for 1 year and then stop working, because that's their way of pushing you to the newest version. Well, that's a problem if I have to go and if someone asks me to teach them Captivate 9, I get a lot of requests from companies who have not updated, in the last 2 years. They're sort of standardized on a certain version of a product, and they want me to come in and teach that. Well, how do I teach something I can't even, run anymore? So that's a disadvantage. But the advantage, of course, is cost savings. I do save a lot of money by spending a lot less per year than what it would cost me to upgrade to a new version every year. So I don't know.
Yeah, you get the upgrade, so you get the incremental upgrades and the incremental learning, and you also get to pay incrementally too, without having to fork out like thousands.
That's true.
That's true. But there is the, I've wondered about this. By the way, I really enjoy the Creative Cloud. I didn't, more than I thought I would. And it doesn't make me believe, though. I mean, eventually, if you paid out for a Storyline, when you buy it right now, you get Storyline, as you said, Joe, you get the entire thing. And even if it, I don't know, what's the term? Even if it ages out, it's a couple versions behind, you can still use it to do things. And I think people forget that about not just, e-learning tools, but Adobe Creative Suite tools and other things that have existed in the past. My fear with the subscription model is kind of twofold. One, for e-learning tools, one, that you'll continue to pay and you'll actually surpass the amount that you might have paid, just to buy it outright. Two, it may be a situation where you don't use it all the time and maybe you don't remember to shut it off or, resubscribe or whatever. But three, that kind of like you said, Joe, that you'll be kind of dragged along or pushed along and may lose access to the previous version. Or, just have you can't just, as my grandmother used to say, put it in a shoebox and shove it under the bed. Like you can't just, kind of own it, do what you want with it, and resurrect it as you feel.
That's true.
Hey, Brent.
Hey, guys.
How you doing, Brent?
Good. Sorry about that. It's been just been chaos around here, so sorry.
If I may add, Craig, that's an excellent point on the idea of the occasional user who may just forget, and that's really a problem with any subscription model for anything, right? If I think have for a while now divested myself of any bills that I get in the mail. They're all being paid automatically online, and that kind of leads to the point where I'm not really very efficient at checking those to make sure that they're accurate and all that. When you get one in the mail, you kind of look at it and go, "Hey, wait a minute, what's that?" And then there would be times when perhaps there would be an issue with a bill, and you'd be able. Now, having said that, nowadays there are fewer errors because there are fewer manual entries.
Fewer people involved.
Yeah, fewer people involved. It's all computer, and Skynet is taking over. So at a certain point, we're until we're beholden to our overlords, we're going to be okay.
Boy, Joe, isn't that what you said? I think it takes a lot more from an individual and a company to manage now all these subscriptions all over the place, and I kind of help my team do that, manage our licenses and stuff like that to different tools, and it's kind of a pain. It's a little confusing, but anyway.
But for the occasional user, like you said, Craig, it could be a real problem in that you sort of forget that you're paying that unless you're being really diligent about checking your account each month.
Yeah. You have to be diligent also choosing the tools that you subscribe to. It's a lot more. There's a lot more choices out there now.
Actually, on that note, Enzo, I've been I run the e-learning subreddit on Reddit, or I'm one of the moderators rather, and I've been noticing between that subreddit.
Paste a link to that.
What's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, between.
Paste a link to that, okay?
Oh yeah, I definitely will. Between that subreddit, my subreddit, I got to say, the e-learning subreddit probably needs some work, but the more interesting one is the instructional design subreddit. And one of the things I'm finding in some of the questions that would come up are questions about tools and who's doing what. There we go. One of the things that I am finding is that people are looking more towards cloud-based HTML5 driven tools that are out there, which does increase the amount, increase the choice. In fact, I had a couple questions recently about should I even bother buying a Storyline or Storyline or a Captivate right now? Can I just get the basics of e-learning development down using an online tool? Because I have a Chromebook, I don't have the materials to do whatever, and I don't have the money to drop like $1,000. I could pay $10 a month, or I could pay like $200 for the regular license. What do you think about that trend, Joe? Like basically the availability of cheaper to get a hold of, not flagship tools that are out there, and do you see that as a positive trend?
That's an intriguing thought. Not one I've really considered before, because you're right, and that most of the time people are buying the tool way before they actually know how to. They could really figure out how to use it properly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to open it up. They might get 2 or 3 days of training, whatever it might take, and then they think that they're instructional designers. They think that they're developers. So many times, these, as we well know, in the learning world, people come from every direction. They're not coming in as instructional designers most of the time. Well, a lot of the time, these are subject matter experts who become trainers internally, who next are becoming e-learning developers. And my classic case, I'll never forget, it was back in the 90s when I was asked to go to, I live outside DC, and I was asked to go to a Navy facility where they had some civilians who were trying to put together some e-learning back in the days of authorware, and this was kind of early. And so I went over there and was surprised to find 5 23, 24-year-old young ladies, all dressed in nice little mini skirts, working away at authorware, because usually when I was asked to go and help people, a lot of times there were guys. There were ladies, of course, but most of the time it was guys, and usually a lot older. Okay, so I asked them, I could see that they had no idea what they were doing after a while, trying to figure out, and they had the most horrendously put together stuff. And come to find out, I said, what were you doing before you started using authorware? And they said, oh, we're artists. I said, oh, okay. And I said, well, what do you use? Photoshop? And they said, no, we use PowerPoint. And I said, but you said you're artists. And they said, yeah, we use PowerPoint to do artwork. Huh. Okay. Did you start out as artists here? And they said, no, we started out as secretaries. Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, secretary, artist, now e-learning developer. I mean, but one of the best people I ever hired was prior to becoming an e-learning developer, a chef. Yeah. So you just never know, right? Anyway, my point is that it's an intriguing thought, because how do you practice putting instructional design principles in place properly without going and spending money, even a subscription on a tool? Of course, most of these tools do give you 30-day trials, but that's not nearly enough to really, get to that point. I don't really. I already had some thoughts about this year and some of the things I wanted to do. They I might have to think about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's there's just a lot, and like every day, and like because I run that subreddit, like I get a lot of basically advertisement posts that I try to bounce out of there, but usually they're to a new tool or to a new online learning platform. And when I was getting my my master's in instructional design, essentially. I was chomping at the bit to get a hold of an authoring tool, right? Like I played around with a couple of them before. Outstart Trainer for TrainerSoft, I think was one of the ones that I'd used prior to going. Yeah, right. So, but I have to say, like, not having access to the tool prior to thinking about how I'd want to set stuff up. Like, honestly, you mentioned, like, one of the best developers you ever found was a chef. Yeah, hell yes, I'd hire a chef. Someone who has a lot of time thinking about prep and is thinking about like a game plan for actually attacking something, who's thinking about an experience over a period of time. Yeah, I would do that. Like set somebody up with that kind of sensibility prior to letting them loose onto the chopping board, onto the table. I don't know. I can't deny someone who's asking about, like an easy to access tool, at least the familiarity of, working within, the familiar frames and, trying to understand how e-learning actually comes together if that's what they want to do. So there's two things. One, getting them inculcated with the traditional e-learning setup, which, is helpful, understanding how SCORM works, et cetera, et cetera. But on the other hand, like, there's just so much that's available to us now. Like, I'm not sure in good conscience, and I don't mean to insult you, Joe, because I know that e-learning authoring tools are your thing. I wonder if it's even like conscionable to actually, say, yeah, you need to get, you need to learn how to do this, as opposed to you need to learn how to put together a learning experience, whatever that might be, to meet a need. So
I have absolutely no disagreement with that at all. I'm dismayed with how many times I get people in my Captivate or Storyline or classes or whatever I might be teaching that have no clue what e-learning even is. Yeah. They've just been given this task now to put together e-learning by some middle manager who doesn't know anything either.
Right.
And now, I'm having to step back and design basic principles as well, or to teach basic principles. So for the last several years now, I've been putting together, I try to instill instructional design principles into any tool I'm teaching as well, so that when I'm teaching it, I'm giving them examples. I'm giving them. When I'm teaching it, Hi, Marco.
Hey, Marco, you asked a question a moment ago. So actually, in just a moment, I wanted to let Joe finish what he was saying, but I want you to ask that question in just a second.
No, that's okay. I need to step away for just a second. I'll be right back. I have to go tell my wife something. I'll be right back.
Okay. Hey, Marco. So you asked a question about what you said that context is king. So do we need overt amounts of instructional design? Enzo, what do you think about that?
Enzo's gone dark.
It's a tough one because I'm always talking about how context is king too, more so than content. Content people can find on their own. There's tons of documentation everywhere about a lot of things. Internally, most likely, if you're talking about technical training, your company is going to have documentation everywhere. So I don't think that the role of an instruction designer in general is to provide more documentation. It is to provide context around what is there.
I think it's got to be both, honestly. I think it's got to be both because working with larger corporations and then smaller organizations, like you got to meet somewhere between. A lot of times, people just don't have the materials that they actually need because they don't know how to make them and they don't see the need for them. But to address your question directly, Marco, do we need overt amounts of instructional design? I'm going to sound like an old person now, but yeah, I think so, and this is why. Kind of to Joe's earlier point about how if your goal is to create e-learning, and this is what we're assuming right now. You do not need any instructional design principles to create something that you can then throw up on a learning management system, right? So in that sense, I think it's imperative that you actually, maybe not overt amounts of instructional design, but I think there need to be why hasn't one of us written instructional design for dummies? Like, none of the four of us have done that yet, and I think we should. So I'm sure someone has done this, but it's given like the cliff notes for instructional design. Like, people need to be hit over the head with that book repeatedly, and then they can go forth and operate a tool. Is my thing. So it's not that you need it. You clearly don't need it to do anything, but to get out there and turn out something that will be useful within your organization, you should know the rules of the road, or at least how to drive safely. That's my take.
I think it goes down to the definition of instructional design and overt amounts of instructional design. Because if we're talking about instructional design as in the sense of just copy everything that is in documentation, if it already exists, and then add a few things like quizzes and a few videos there and all that without putting much thought into it, then I don't think that's the right definition of instructional design and the amount of instructional design that goes into anything. We do have to provide more context if it means coming up with new ways of presenting information. So, that is okay. But coming up with things that are just a formal documentation and adding everything into a PowerPoint and throwing in bullet points and quizzes, I don't think that's not even the definition of instructional design. But so many people seem to think it is.
So, Enzo, I think you're spot on. I think the challenge that we have in the industry is we've probably Frankenstein's monster, because all of us who've been in the industry a long time, back to the early days of online learning, it was all instructional design. We were trying to overcome people's thoughts about face-to-face training. So we were obviously showing them that online training was potentially more effective, or could be more effective, as opposed to more effective than face-to-face. We've now created a monster where the majority of training is online, and it's being used as a tick box exercise. So we have a behavior in business that, we'll do this to tick box, and they've forgotten about that actually fundamentally we do training to try and change behaviors. So until we get back to that place, I believe, where businesses recognize, or the majority of businesses recognize, we do training to change behavior, therefore people will be operationally better, then I think when we talk about instructional design, we can have a better conversation.
Yes. Exactly.
Just my take.
That's right on.
Yeah, actually, man, so we were going to drag us down to the path of me posing this question, but do you think, I have two questions, one for everybody, and then one that's kind of more for Joe, as the e-learning tool guy. One, do you think that a lot of e-learning for everybody, would you think that everyone would be better off if they kind of do it as Marco said, and kind of remember that we're trying to change behavior, and if what you're doing isn't made to change behavior, at least in the end, as the end result, that maybe you shouldn't do it? And two, do you think that recent technological advances, in the internet in general, are having any kind of effect on traditional e-learning, that can be created by authoring tools? Go.
Who did you want first? Marco, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll pick up the last point. So I think, so the one about, is the Internet of Things changing the way that we're creating e-learning? Absolutely. I mean, there's a tool, I don't know if you guys have come across it, called the Adapt tool.
Yeah, I had a good conversation this week on that.
I've been involved in that project for a good 18 months now. And what I love about that is, we talk about truly responsive design. Yes, it does that. The other great thing is it's free. So that's brilliant. But for me, what it does, it takes away the next button. And it's funny, talk about design, or, I suppose those little things. If we think about, I always say this when I talk to people. What's the most common place people go to learn? Arguably, it's Google. Do you click a next button and you scroll? So this authoring tool enables you to scroll, opposed to click next. It's just a little simple thing. So in answer, Craig, you know, that there's a change the way I've seen it.
I totally agree. It goes to also to something that I'm always talking, and some people might not like that. I'm always talking about the idea of learning objectives. Do we need to tell the learner the learning objectives in the sense of, after this class, you should be able to be bored to death. 3, give up on this course after reading the second slide with objectives listed in bullets. 3, you know, so I think a lot of the instructional design, where we get it wrong, and I think, at least I speak for myself, we're all guilty of it, is sometimes we try to make it too obvious to the learner that it is instructional design. And I think that about clicking next is the same thing. So we take the idea of games, right? As soon as we apply game design, game mechanics, etc., to learning, it becomes boring. Even people don't want to do it anymore. Because we make it about us, about the professionals. Like, look at the good job that we're doing, creating this chapter for you, and we're going to explain to you everything about, you know, this lesson plan. You know, and I think the more we can hide from the learner on the side of the instructional side, you know, this is what we are prepping you for, I think the better.
Marco, I'm spacing a little bit here because I'm trying to remember the name, but is it Kineo that is the big one? I had a conversation this week, in fact, with a good hour conversation with someone. Is that, sorry?
So the two big companies that are involved, well, there's 3 actually. There's Kineo, Learning Pool, and Sponge. They're the 3 big companies that have sort of set it up, and then you've got the community. You know, So you're right, Kineo's one. Okay,
well, I'm actually going to be reviewing the Adapt tool that they have built, but I'm kind of thinking it wasn't Kineo. I'll have to double check and see. I'm trying to get back into my Evernote, and somehow Evernote, I have to spend like 4 days organizing all the stuff I have in Evernote now. Anyway, the point is, yes, this has been a frustration forever, right? I mean, the fact that we are throwing people into a pool with absolutely no training or no idea how to swim, no idea how, and the deep end of the pool, no idea how to swim, no way of getting themselves out of the pool, etc. So when it really comes down to it, the biggest issue we always have had is education, educating the general population, but it's most especially the management who is calling for e-learning, that it isn't a simple, quick thing. And it shocks me how often it comes to the point where, oh, we got our new software coming out next Tuesday. We need e-learning built for it. And it's like, okay, when do you need the e-learning by? Well, by Tuesday. It's like, well, okay, but it's Friday. And they go, yeah, and the problem is, it's like, no. They expect that it's a simple little click and you're done, right? And by the way, it shouldn't cost more than $50 because after all, it's just a little click and you're done. So the point is, there's really no understanding of what a true e-learning experience should be or could be. And a lot of times, honestly, they don't care, right? It's just that they have to check off that box in the list of requirements that they've been given. And there's no qualifier as to the level of quality that thing should be, because they don't even know what a level of quality should be.
Right. Well, well, again, that they would have an opinion about the level of quality if they felt. And your idea about the check box, or the kind of like checking it off in a list, makes a lot of sense, because it's really not meant to have an appreciable effect. Partially because, and this is maybe my bias because I spent all my time talking about XAPI. Partially because we don't make them appreciate the fact that we might be able to measure results and then compare them over time in order to improve our performance improvement support systems, or to figure out what might be wrong in process within in performance process within a workplace. Like we don't fill them with confidence that this is something we'd be able to give to them. And like the learning management system, I'm sorry to learning management systems vendors and attached folk, Brent, I'm talking to you. But I definitely think that, we're getting there. We're getting closer to being able to give actionable information But, you know, I think even if you have the tools to do that, I think a lot of people in L&D are not necessarily, they don't think that they're supposed to do that necessarily. And therefore, the people they're kind of working for don't think that's something you should expect from them. You know, so maybe we have the tools now, but we don't necessarily have the know-how and the will. So, but that all goes back to the quality of e-learning, in my opinion. Like, you know, if all those other things are known, then you know what kind of e-learning experience you need within your larger ecosystem. Like, you don't have to think like, I just need something put together, slapped together with a cover on it and some pictures and the next button, go, just fit it in there. All right, we're done. We met our requirements. Like, you actually do it for a reason. So.
Well, you're right. And honestly, it's too much of a mountain to try to climb to educate everybody on what good e-learning is. I think the only way to really do it is to show the difference between bad and good and let them, you know, decide for themselves, oh, yes, that would be better, wouldn't it? And that's what I often have to end up doing with clients. Unfortunately, most of the work that you and I do is probably not for public consumption. We're not even allowed to post it because it's proprietary to the client. They're afraid of competition seeing it and so on. And so we always have to make up our own good examples, right. But then who's got the time to really dedicate to create? So
Melissa Milloway does. She's my spirit animal for e-learning excellence, because she does. Yeah, she does all the stuff I don't have time to do. I'm just like,
I don't understand how she does it, and she still has a job. For the longest time, I thought she didn't have a job.
No, I thought, yeah, exactly. I thought she was just like kind of chilling out at home, like, you know, innovating and just waiting to get picked up. And it's like, no, I have a job. I'm just.
Is that Melissa Milloway?
Yes. Yeah. Let me.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, she's
and
great.
By the way. Very good.
Here, she always tries to play with new technology too.
And by the way, Marco, the person, the company I talked to is Evolve.
Evolve.
Yeah, they're own. Let's see, his name is Daryl. I'll have to look up his last name, but it says I wrote a lot of notes on this. He had built it originally when he was doing work in Kenya, but he is from the UK and he is south of I forget now. Anyway, yeah, I think he's Midlands east, but I don't quite remember exactly the town. Anyway, he showed me the tool. Says it's been around for a couple of years now, but they really haven't made it too public yet. So there'll be a fourth one, I think, soon.
Yeah. So Learning Pool did something clever. So they were probably the lead company developer on it. And what they did that was clever is they were a Totara partner. So they put the tool up in the platform. So all their customers who paid a subscription could utilize the tool and build the content within the platform. And it's, you know, I call it a tool for dummies, because it is a tool for dummies. It you know, is exactly what Enzo says. There's no instructional design per se, because it's that point, isn't it? You know, people in L&D, you know, yes, whilst they might be great face-to-face trainers, don't necessarily have the knowledge or the skills to be able to put that online. And I think, you know, you touched on it, very pertinent, and it resonated with me, Enzo, when you said about, you know, the trick of instructional design is doing it so people don't even realize they're doing it. And the best example I can give of that is, you know, I remember 15, 14, 13 years ago when we created e-learning, it was the norm that before each and every module, the subject matter in that module, you did a pre-training assessment to gauge what people knew and what they didn't know. But I've noticed over the years, I don't see many courses with pre-training assessments, or is it just me?
No. It's not just you. I think that, and I remember those days. I think it comes from that came from the assumption that you wanted to make sure that this was even a necessary part of someone's learning or performance improvement path. Let me stop saying learning, because in the context of the workplace, it's like, I don't know, learning is kind of for suckers. Like, I'm not really, like, I just want to, you know, I want to know how to do something. I want to know that you know how to do something. And when I say know how to do something, I mean, when you're confronted with the, you know, the thing, you become an agent that can perform this task appropriately. So yeah, learning is for suckers. You can quote me, Brent. So yeah, definitely. But anyway, back to what you said, Marco. I entirely agree. The reason it's gone is that that was even a consideration. The funny thing is here at ADL, we're doing a lot of research and we're helping to coordinate a lot of research about learning paths and adaptive learning. And it's really kind of, we're always looked at as, kind of being very theoretical in our thinking. And, we're trying to create a training and learning architecture that is worthy of, kind of combining experience tracking and, and competencies and a bunch of other things. And it really is quite lofty. But it really does a lot come back to responsibility, the same level of responsibility that we were trying to show back then. The reason you're not seeing those things now is that people, they create courses with the assumption that everyone's going to have to take it. Like whether or not it's useful for everyone, like it's not really even a consideration. Anyway.
But isn't that insulting? If we think about us as fundamental learners, going through, I don't know what you call it in America, junior school, primary school, we call it here, going all the way through your school, isn't that insulting? Because you as a young person, certainly when you were in college, if somebody just threw loads of stuff at you, you'd jump up and scream, wouldn't you? So why do we do it in business? I struggle.
So I'm gonna change the subject real quick because I want to not abruptly. I want to kind of latch onto something you just said, Marco, and I want to get everyone's opinion about this because I think you guys are an interesting collection of people, and I'd like to hear your opinion. So, so as to counter that, we have, massively open online courses, or at least the framework for creating, what's the term? Transmedia courses, I'd say, where basically you have different types of media, different types of learning activities kind of strung together into a tiny ecosystem, with the, maybe with a cohort that is kind of going through the process with you and you can sort of bounce ideas off them or have discussion with them about things that you've encountered. So we have the ability to kind of make something much more involved and much more personalized and much more responsive. But I don't know if you guys have noticed, I don't know if a lot of MOOCs are really kind of rising to the top in that regard. Why do you think that is?
My impression of MOOCs has always been that it's not unlike sitting in a lecture hall and listening to an expert talk about whatever, and having yes, of course it can be quite different as well. But the point of it is that's never personalized. You're sitting in a college, you go to university and you sit in a lecture hall with 500 other people. You can't expect that what the teacher's going to do is going to be personalized to you. And that's sort of like what's the term, one to many, rather than the idea of one to one, which is where e-learning per se is. The idea has always been, we're going to make this feel like an individual experience for you. Craig is gone. That's, I don't know where I was going with that. I've been taking notes and I've been wanting to to try. Hey, it's Fred back. You're good.
We're practicing swapping in and out.
Yeah, it's dizzying. Yes. What we're really talking about is the crux of the matter. We're getting some feedback. What we're really talking about is, of course, the whole reason for the e-learning world, and I've never taken the tact of what Craig said about learning is bad, but it's I can see where he's coming from that, with that. I really like what you said, and so about and I really believe I really saying really a lot. I need to start using the term more of you're going to not be in essence learning, you're just going to do it. And by doing it, you're going to know how to do it. I often say that, but not in those words. I often say things like, you're going to learn how to be able to do this, this, and this, so that, when you get to the job, you're going to do it with your eyes closed. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm going to be quiet for a moment.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Is instead of I think a lot of times when we're writing for the learner, the instructional objectives, we not only do we say it in a boring way with very formal phrasing and all, but we also talk about it with describing, listing, explaining. As a learner, I don't care if I'm able to explain something. I want to do something with it. And I think you're right on there, on the money there, Joe, with do. Why can't we describe, maybe without a bullet list or anything, but embed that sense of you are doing something after you're done with this? For example, I just did a little thing, I forgot which conference it was, on using Canva for doing online infographics, like authoring infographics online. There are several tools out there that let you do that, including Microsoft now has Sway, right? I don't know how old that is, but I just discovered Sway. I didn't know about it before. Just discovered this, where you can go online and create infographics, cards, interactive stories with images, videos, etc., like easy on the browser. And instead of listing objectives, like at the end of this, you should be able to describe Canva. You should be able to explain how to use this. No, at the end of this, you will create an infographic. That's what you're going to be doing. So come to this session with a problem, and we're going to create an infographic that solves that problem, helps you present that project or whatever it is. You know, so I think in terms of doing, that's what learning should always be.
But Enzo, is that word on the Bloom's taxonomy list? Because if it's not there, I can't use it. Okay.
You know,
Bloom's taxonomy has words like list and explain and things like that, and if it's not on there, I'm sorry. No, actually, Bloom's has been extended and it has a ton of verbs in there, but you will create something seems so much more difficult, for people. I worked on a pretty interesting project last year that I think is in line with what you're saying, because this was a project for electricians, who there are about 30,000 that this company trains every year in basic electrician subjects. Okay, electrical theory and things in that. What's an ohm? What's an how to use an ammeter? That sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And they use a physical box that they call a trainer, where you can plug in different things and see the results and so on. And so what the first thing that they do is they have to calculate what they believe the results will be. This is in real life, okay? This is in those training centers. Mm-hmm. They have to calculate what they believe the results will be by putting these different values together, by putting these wires here and here. And in the end, they do it. And if it matches, yay, they understand, okay? And these are important things to understand, because they have to know ahead of time that when they plug in the wires a certain way, that's the results they should expect. And if they don't know these things, they could cause a catastrophe, So it's really important stuff, especially if they're working in power plants. So the point of it was that they wanted me to be able to build something in Captivate, for instance, that would allow them to, they had already built an online simulator of that trainer box that was pretty cool, okay? It was built in such a way that you could actually have all of the ability of plugging things into a hardware piece, and now it's on a screen. And it was all, you could drag a wire over, animate over, and you put it where you want it and so on. They wanted me to be able to communicate with that. So in other words, they didn't want people to just explain or list or things like. They wanted people to do it, okay, as part of the performance aspect of the learning that we were putting together. So I had to build a ton of JavaScript in the end to be able to communicate between their software and in this case Captivate, which is what they wanted, to be able to communicate back and forth, so that every time they were supposed to try something, they had to click the button. It would launch the software piece. It took seconds. And then the results of what they did would be communicated back to Captivate. And I could say, no, and here's what's happening, and here's, whatever. And that was really interesting, because they were actually doing something. And I think that's the key. You're absolutely right.
You just did something with Captivate that I never done, actually, that receiving the data back from the hardware.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, and they don't make it real fluid. In other words, you have to, you basically, like most of these authoring tools, actually, they limit you to things like set a variable, get a variable, and a few other things. Okay, but the set and get variable are the biggies. because you basically have to, like most of these tools, they don't have fun things like arrays, and what they want to do is send back 127 different values from that simulator, right? Which meant that I had to create 127 different variables within Captivate to be able to get those. But to deal with it was a nightmare if I didn't have the ability in JavaScript to have an array to accept those values from the simulator and then interpret those and then go through a loop to set the variables within Captivate correctly. In the end, it worked great, but it wasn't it didn't take a day.
It brings a point that we're talking about evolution of learning here, right? And we see especially 2015, 2016 now coming, a lot of, including there, Holly even said, Internet of Things, connected, even objects are connected intelligently to one another now. Yet learning is this disconnected thing that happens in a learning management system, right? And what you just said is something where while you were learning, you're actually doing something at the same time. So I think, and we were talking about trends early on, where I would wish, and I wish it would be as early as 2016, we would see more of this, where by learning, I'm actually doing something, intelligently, systems are connected, and they see me as one person, one individual that is growing toward objectives that I've set. For example, if I'm a salesperson and I'm learning in a learning course, traditional, in the LMS, about sales acumen, whatever it is, and then I go into the system as that person and go into the sales system and close the deal based on something that I just learned. That should be something that should speak to each other. So I have one cohesive experience throughout learning, doing, learning, and back and forth. But it's right now. I
think that's coming. It's coming. I'll just jump in and just add that I made a comment earlier, and I'll just reiterate it. And one of the things that I've found is that a lot of this stuff that we do, and I know instructional designers hate me for saying this, but a lot of it is just getting information cut loose and free and delivered to people and making content easily accessible, easily viewable in all formats at the right time, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Until that is done, until like all the content, or there's a system in place where content is created, it's freely accessible, it's always out there. Nobody's going to care about, okay, now, let's get instructional about it and let's make this content a little bit better, because we're like skipping the basic steps of what people need in order to be productive. And we're jumping right into training when we're not even giving them access to content.
I think some of that is a lack of awareness on the part of, I don't know what you call them, organizational development folk, knowledge management folk, instructional designers. Basically, you could consider that, if you want to use like a baseball terminology, like you could consider that the fundamentals, or basketball, the fundamentals of actually doing stuff before you have to think about actually playing, in any games. You have to have, ball handling and other stuff down. I think a lot of times instructional designers and other people they're forced to, or they lapse into situations in the workplace or on a job where they don't have a masterful command of all the content that has been created within that realm, so they can pull on that. Although I do agree with you, Brent, like a lot of times content curation is like the most caring thing you can do within an organization. Like you show your people that you love them by making sure, like, hey, you know what? Like there's actually a bunch of stuff that was written back in 2008, 2 years or 5 years before you even came here. It's old stuff. I've dusted it off. I've updated it so that it can actually, be useful for you. Here, I've put it online. It's in SharePoint, and you're using SharePoint because your area, uses that for whatever reason. But like, if they use that, that's where it is. It's available to everyone. You let everyone know. Like, it's minimal work, but it actually means that you haven't created new matter. You've actually just kind of brought it to the fore. So I agree with you there, Brent. I think though that it's incumbent on, especially on instructional designers who work in a not static, but kind of like within a corporation or, a university, school district or whatever, to, if they have a place where they can amass, like get like a map of where information is, and they can tell people where it is, they can start actually creating an honest to God, learning ecosystem, and then learning paths for people. So I do agree with you. Like if you're in that kind of situation, your first move is to learn everything about where all the content is and why some of it's wrong, and why some people, don't talk to the people in this corner of the building, and why the information that comes from here is really useful, but no one consumes it. And then basically sort all that out, and then start figuring out how to make people better. So
yeah, and that's really all I'm saying is, and I think what it boils down to, you were right on the money with, whose responsibility is it? And training people say, well, that's not us. IT should do that, or we have tech writers, or maybe we should have knowledge management people. That's not a trainer's job. I'm an instructional designer, and that's not my responsibility because that's not instructional design. Well, my big kick over the last few years has been, we're training professionals first that are part of an organization, and our first and foremost care is to provide value to the business. And if the biggest value we can provide to the business is helping the organization free up its content so that people can access it more easily and more quickly and in more formats, then by all means we should do that first, because it's a hell of a lot easier than doing analysis after analysis after analysis and creating course after course after course over 6, 8, 12 months, and then realizing that people really didn't need it. I mean, here's a question to everybody out there. How many times have you been in your cubicle as a training professional or as a training manager, and you've had somebody wander by and start a conversation with you and just say, the real reason why I came by is I was just curious, do you guys have any courses or online or classroom courses around, a particular topic, right? And you just happen to know that, who the subject matter expert is in that, and where there's some content, and you kind of direct them. You say, what, we don't have any courses in that yet. We're working on it, but the subject matter expert is this person, and there's some content up on this particular website. Let me send you a link. You give people that, and they don't ever come back. They don't ever come back and ask you for the course anymore. Because they more often than not find what they need. They get the information they need, and boom, they're back on the job, and it's no big deal. They stop caring. If they can't find that stuff with the resources you sent them, or if they can't find specifically what they're looking for, then they end up coming back. But that tends to be the flow. And so giving people access first, I think, is the lowest hanging fruit we can possibly create and do. And at the risk of abruptly changing topic, I also wanted to get back to that Internet of Things conversation as well. And
can you hold it, Brent? Can you hang on though? I really feel like I need to point out a couple of things here regarding this topic. Sure. One is that we can't forget that the world of corporate level, government level, agency level learning is far and wide, and there's no one solution. So right. We've been talking, for instance, about the Internet of Things, right? And we've been talking about the having everything connected and so on. And how cool would it be if, it's sort of like Ender's Game, we think we're playing a game, but in the end, we actually, accomplish something like killing off all these aliens. The point is that it all in the end is cool if it can work. But what about, selling a car to somebody or whatever? You got all those. You got so much learning out there for soft skills types of situations where you can't possibly, practice or you can't possibly have it actually apply to the real world immediately at the moment you're doing it. You really have to practice it so that when you are doing it. So that's quite a different situation.
And I'll totally agree. And I'll thank you very much for bringing that up. You're right. And I always forget to add that as a caveat before I talk about one particular thing. There is a massive spectrum of areas that we touch on as professionals, right? There's the soft skills, there's management leadership, there's basic hard skills. There's all of these different things that we provide value to by using the instructional information, the science of learning, all of that kind of stuff that we that we do. So when I say, when I talk about things like this whole content issue and cutting the content loose and doing that first, that is said knowing that there is all of these other things, and cutting that content loose does not solve all of the business's problems. I'm just saying, if you're going to go for bang for your buck right out the chute.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And we frankly forget that too often, and we have a vested interest in pretending we don't know that so that we can get, a course written that may never be used, because after all, there is all that content out there that somebody figured out how to access without needing a course. Look, the fact is too that courses take time to create, especially the good kinds of courses. And in our world, and every single year, things are going faster and faster and faster. The course we build now, that takes 6 months. 6 months from now, it may only have a shelf life of 1 month before it has to be replaced. I'm sorry, but almost all the e-learning we've ever created is not going to be perpetually used for the next 10,000 years. It's probably what 2 years ago is no longer being used. Maybe even a year ago, maybe even 6 months ago. The kinds of topics that are going to continue to be used are much more general and much more applicable to lots of situations over time, like maybe anti-money laundering type of stuff. But even there, technology changes, and you have to, apply, teach people how to use the new technology to prevent money laundering, that sort of thing. So I love what you're saying, Brent. I really believe that it's crucial, and it's making me think hard, and it's hurting my head. Craig, I don't know if he can still hear us, but I love, I'm going to start quoting him. Content curation means you care. I love that. Content curation means you care. It's also alliteration. Yeah. Okay.
That's good. I missed that in the messages, but yeah, that's great.
No, he said it. He said it out loud. He said it very quickly, and I just picked up on that. Yeah, caring, content curation. Say that 12 times fast.
I'll write it in. Content creation means you care.
And that's from Craig. Now it looks like you said it. Yeah.
Oh crap! I forgot the @ All right. That's me. Always trying to steal.
Plagiarize you. Yeah. All right.
I'm working on it. Hold on.
Do we just go on and on all day? Is that how it works?
We never stop.
Yeah. We're way above already, 10 minutes.
Yeah, we've gone way long. I wanted to touch on the Internet of Things stuff only because I was at CES last week, but let's put it off until next Friday. The topic is still always going to be hot, so no big deal.
Wow, yeah. I've never been to CES. I always think I'm going to go, and then I never do. And yeah, I know it's really different now than it used to be, but it'll be interesting to hear that.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I'd been wanting to go for years, so it was very, very interesting to see and to look at it and watch all of that from an e-learning perspective and from our industry perspective. It really kind of changed a few things. Nothing major, but just kind of it kind of made me think a lot.
It didn't make you throw up your hands and go like, "Well, that's it. My career's over."
Yeah.
Oh wait, you're right. Yeah, it was curation.
I want to go back. I want to go back. I want to go there. I've never been to CS.
All right.
I was talking about back. I think maybe we should close with something like this, where it summarizes the conversation about instructional design. I think our biggest role is to help people connect the dots. I think that's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And validation came when Neil deGrasse Tyson said, and I think in an opening keynote, that with those exact words, learning is connecting dots that many people might not have connected. And our job is to help them connect dots, whether that's new knowledge they need, a piece of documentation there, getting connected with events, helping them figure out their path to success, their new career path, or getting them connected with the right people. I think that's summarizes, I think, in general, our role as learning professionals. It's not just content creation. It's content curation. It's connection. It's enablement.
I've often said it's it's on a similar note, it's our job we connect the people who need the knowledge with the people who have the knowledge. And sometimes we do that by just connecting those two people. And other times we do that by having to create some sort of intervention to fill that gap between those two people, or in order to scale up the knowledge of the person that has the knowledge so that it can go out to a mass audience without taking up all that person's time. We create something, an artifact of some sort that makes it capable for mass quantities of people to share in the knowledge that that person has. And at the end of the day, I really do think that that is the lowest hanging fruit and the easiest thing we can do. And to Joe's point, we absolutely have to do better at the soft skills stuff and the hands-on stuff and help people know that they have to practice, right, over a long period of time, the spaced repetition, all that kind of stuff, that's important as well. But we have to start somewhere. So
I like to leave.
I'll leave it at that.
A thought on that too. I've often said that in our industry, the e-learning people, the people who make up our industry, tend to be nicer than those of other industries overall. Okay, and the question is why? Why are we tend to be nicer? Not too many nasty guys and gals running around those conferences, right? Yeah. On the other hand, you go to a conference where it's all programmers and nothing more. You're going to get a wide variety of people there. Not as many nice people as those who like to sit in the dark and code in the dark, and that's kind of like what I also like to do sometimes. But the point of it all is why? Well, it's because we're in the business of helping people, right? And people who like to help other people tend to be nice. But also, it's a question of if you're going to be talking to a SME and trying to get an understanding of the subject, they come in all sorts of sizes, but a lot of times they're experts and they're really busy and they can't be bothered with helping, someone like you. They really have no time to waste on someone like you. And so being able to negotiate and compromise and be able to instill in them a sense of this is valuable what you're doing, this is going to in essence help to immortalize your knowledge and you and so on, is crucial. Yeah. There's a lot of human interaction that takes place in our industry that can't be divorced from what we do. And so I'll leave it at that. I think it's important.
Very much so. Enzo, any parting words?
I think those were my parting words. Besides, nice. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
2 weeks? All right. Let's do it again in 2 weeks.
Thanks.
So it's good to see you, man.
Same here, Brent. Good to see you. Good conversation.
All right. Awesome. Holly, Marco, Enzo, Craig, everybody else that's on.
Everybody else is on, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay, thanks.
See you.
Yep, adios.
Bye.
Ciao.